Today we are going to be talking about probably the biggest story around the NFL right now. I mean, there's not really anything to talk about, but it's not just the biggest story around the Vikings, it's the entire NFL. There isn't much to talk about anyways, and that is Dalvin Cook is holding off to play for the Vikings because he wants to get paid. I mean, he wants to get paid, and I have no problem with players with his talent to be demanding money. It is totally fine for him to be wanting as much money as he is. Vikings right now have 12 point, I think I'm going to recheck this. I think it's 12.295 million in cap space. Dalvin Cook wants a contract of 14 million. They offered him already 10 million or somewhere around there. But the only reason why they're kind of skeptic on giving it to him is because Dalvin Cook has yet to play an entire season in the NFL. With his first year only playing, what was it? Okay, so his first year he only played 12 games his first year, so he missed 4. Second year went out with the injury really soon. We remember that. He only played 5 games. I'm surprised he even played 5 games. I remember him like 2. And then last season he missed 2 regular season games, which it was basically 3 because he went out with the injury early in one of them. So that would be 3 seasons in the NFL that Dalvin Cook has played so far, and his last season was his best. We only missed 2 games, but it was basically 3. And so he is yet to play an entire season, so they have to expect for him to get injured again. That's why they drafted Alexander Mattison. They needed someone who they knew could step in and compete for his job. They have Mike Boone. They have Amir Abdullah. They gave Amir Abdullah another contract because we don't know what's going to happen without Dalvin Cook. We have to be able to win without Dalvin Cook. Last year, the Vikings did not look very good without him. They were the most run-heavy team in the entire NFL. Now, I know the Ravens ran more than the Vikings, and some other teams ran more than the Vikings, but no team ran more compared to like their pass game or whatever. So Dalvin Cook, how did he do last year? This is his most recent year, so they're going to base this contract off of him. And we saw other running backs do this too. So it's really hard to get running backs paid. So last year, exactly 1 year ago today, the best running back in the league was Ezekiel Elliott. I don't even know if he's top 5 anymore. I don't think not many people would have Ezekiel Elliott in top 5. It would probably be like Saquon Barkley, it would be Christian McCaffrey, Derrick Henry. There's probably some other Dalvin Cook, and then someone else I'm missing right now that I can't think of. But anyways, Zeke wouldn't even be top 5. Last year, your top 5 would have Zeke and both Todd Gurley in it, who last year at this time was getting paid. Like, they got their contracts big. And this is exactly what's happening with Dalvin Cook. Both Zeke and Todd Gurley got injured last season, which obviously usually you have to plan for that on a running back. They get hit more than any other player, but they were so good. And then they got paid, and then they kind of fell off really fast. And this is what we see with so many running backs. They just fall off so much faster. They get hit way more than any other player, which is why it's so hard to pay a running back this much money. Now, a run game is very important on a team, which is why without Dalvin Cook, I don't know how the Vikings are going to look. So this is why I think the Vikings will pay him, just because we need him. I mean, $14 million is a lot of money for a player who will most likely get injured, but he was a big piece. He was the best player on the Vikings last year. Now, I wouldn't say he's the best player in the Vikings, but last season, he helped the Vikings more than any other player and had a lot of games where he just dominated. So last year, Dalvin Cook averaged 4.5 yards a carry. 4.5 yards a carry is like average. That's not that great. And then was 10th in the NFL in rushing yards with 1,135. I think he was the first Minnesota Vikings running back to break 1,000 yards since Adrian Peterson, however many years ago. And 1,000 yards is also not that much. 1,000 rushing yards. And then was 7th in the NFL in touchdowns. He was great inside the red zone. Dalvin Cook did great inside the red zone. But also, you would know Dalvin Cook was not just for his rushing yards. In fact, I felt like when watching the games, he was used in the pass game more than he was used in the run game. You would see so many check down passes to Dalvin Cook, and that's what the Vikings did way more than running it. At least that's what I felt like. I mean, it most likely didn't happen, but Dalvin Cook is amazing after the catch, which is why he was used so much in check down passes, averaging 9.8 yards a carry or reception on the catches, and then on 63 targets. It felt like it was more than 63, but maybe that's because they felt like every time they passed it to Cook. So he missed 2 regular season games last year, like I said, which the Vikings did not do great when they were without Dalvin Cook. And that's just what you don't want to see, because Dalvin Cook gets injured so fast, and to pay him $14 million is going to be really hard. And if this deal gets done, I doubt Everson Griffin is going to be back. Next year, the Vikings, though, even though they do have the cap space, they freed up the cap space, which is nice. I do think they're gonna pay Dalvin Cook, maybe not the full 14 million. They could. I mean, they go negative 2 million against the cap, which is gonna be totally fine. Vikings don't gotta pay many players next season though. Next offseason. I think Anthony Harris, they just gave him a 1-year contract. Jaleel Johnson's contract is gonna get done. Who else do they have? They don't really have to pay anyone for the next offseason. This offseason was bad. They had to pay a lot of players. But Anthony Harris, I don't know if they're going to pay Anthony Harris, but if they do, I felt like they gave him the franchise tag to trade him, to tag and trade. I don't know if they're going to pay Anthony Harris. It would be nice to see him get paid. Jaleel Johnson, we don't know how these players are going to perform this next season. I'm high on Jaleel Johnson. I think we need Jaleel Johnson. We need those run stiffers that we're not good at last year. We did not do good against the run last year, which is what I think Jaleel Johnson is good at, and I think they're going to pay him as long as he has a pretty good season this 2020 season, which I think he will. But after that, we have like Sean Mannion. He only got a 1-year contract. Amir Abdullah only got a 1-year contract, which I like to see. I wouldn't have gave him contracts at all, but it's understandable why they did. I mean, they couldn't have there wasn't really many people they could have gotten replaced for Sean Mannion's spot, because they gave obviously Kirk Cousins a new contract. They finalized a new deal with him or whatever for some reason. It was fine. I mean, it freed up cap space when doing that, so I'm not against that deal at all. I think that was a pretty good deal. So Dalvin Cook, do you think he will get paid? Do you think he will? I think he has to, just because I think the Vikings have to go all in this season, and if it's going to look like last season, I don't think they're going to be as run heavy as they were last season. I know other teams ran more than them, but I would say the Vikings were the most run heavy team in the entire NFL, just because when watching the games, they would pass, like, even though they put up a lot of passing yards because of the Diggs catches, they ran all the time on, I'm going to check it right now. It was only 49%. I might have to fact check that, but it felt like more than 49%. But still, the Vikings ran the ball so much, gave it to Cook a lot. That's another thing. Even when they give it to the Cook, it kind of feels like they ran it. I mean, they 63 targets on receptions, 9.8 yards a carry. That was crazy. That looked really good on Kirk Cousins' stat sheet. So it looked really well to see Dalvin Cook on the Vikings team. He was obviously, undoubtedly, the best Viking last season, who helped the Vikings out the most. Without him, our team did not look good, except for the Chargers game. Okay, the Chargers game, our run game looked totally fine. Mike Boone was killing it in that game. But the Chargers don't even have a bad defense. I don't know why. I think they must have just started to give up. I don't know what happened with the Chargers on that game. Their defense is not supposed to be as bad as it is. I mean, they've got a lot of talent on defense, which is why it looked kind of weird for that to happen. So Vikings don't have to pay many people in 2021. They don't. They have Anthony Harris, Jaleel Johnson. There's other people too, but we don't know how those other people are going to look right now. Those are the only two players right now that I do think will have a pretty good 2021 or 2020 season that they're going to have to pay in 2021, and they should be able to free up a pretty good good amount of cap space for those players. I don't think they're going to bring back Anthony Harris just because of how we're going to look with this Dalvin Cook contract, and I think he is going to get paid, and Dalvin Cook wants to play here. He said this right after the season was done. He said he loves playing in Minnesota, and he wants to play here, which is what most players play. I mean, most players say. If they don't say that, they don't want to play here, obviously. If they say that, then they do. Most players say that anyway, so it's not that crazy that he said that, but I do think that the Vikings will get this deal done because Dalvin Cook is holding off. They offered him a $9 million contract, which is a good contract. I think that's pretty good for a player that gets injured as much as him, that has his amount of talent. But the thing is that he is a running back, and we see a lot of running backs fail after they get paid, and running backs, they can have a really good season, next season have an awful season. Now, Zeke didn't have a terrible season. He was kind of coming back. I mean, in the last half of the 2019 season, he was looking pretty good. The Dallas Cowboys could have used that in the earlier parts of the season, but Zeke was not looking good at all. I mean, we saw him against the Vikings games. The Vikings just shut down Zeke, and he's still a good running back. I would say Zeke is still obviously in the top 10, but as of last season, didn't look like it. Todd Gurley 2 seasons ago was the best running back in the league. Now look at him. He got kicked off of the Rams team, which was a good decision. I mean, the Rams are kind of looking for a rebuild right now. I don't think they can go to another Super Bowl with their current team, even though they are pretty old. Jared Goff, I'm not much of a fan of Jared Goff, so they kind of needed to do that, but Then he got picked up by the Falcons. What are the Falcons going to do in the NFC South? I don't think the Falcons are going to do anything in the NFC South. They're going against Tom Brady and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers 2 times a year. They're going against Teddy Bridgewater and the Panthers. We don't know how the Panthers are going to look, and then they're going against the Saints. And the Saints have been good for however many years. So I don't know how the Falcons are going to look and why they took Todd Gurley and why they weren't going for a rebuild. But I guess it's because Matt Ryan and Julio Jones are getting older, and they want to still. They still want to compete. I mean, they need to get their first Super Bowl. They have yet to get a Super Bowl. So I guess the Falcons are going in, which was kind of a surprise. I thought they had to kind of go in a rebuild mode because of how their division is looking right now. And so, yeah, let me know. Do you think Dalvin Cook will grab his contract? Obviously, he's going to be holding off until they do. I think that will happen just because he does have one more year on his current contract, and they're going to have to pay him. There's a lot of running backs that are going to be free agents in 2021, though. I don't have a current list of them, but there's so many running backs that have one more year left on their contract that the Vikings could be able to pick up if they don't do this deal, which it's going to get done. I mean, they can't have Dalvin Cook on the roster and not playing for an entire season. But yeah, it's gonna suck to see if they give him this $14 million deal or however much they're gonna give, maybe all this cap, this 12.295 million contract. See if it's like it'll probably only be like a 1-year extension on his deal, maybe 2-year extension. I don't know how many years Dalvin Cook is saying he wants, but it's gonna be hard because this next offseason there's so many options, which is why I do think it's a good idea for Dalvin Cook to hold off, because he knows that his job could get taken very easily. There's a lot of running backs that are going to be free agents next year that I don't think are going to be re-signed by their team. So yeah, it's going to be interesting what's going to happen. I think that they will give him his contract. I think they have to. I think they have to give him the contract. Do you think it's going to be worth it, though? Do you think Dalvin Cook, $14 million a year, is going to be worth it? I do think he is a top 5 running back, but that can change very easily in 2020. After this 2020 season, that can change very easily. He could be bottom 5 running back. So yeah, let's see what happens.